All right, so good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Safe Workplaces Dialogues. I am Srimoy, and I lead the legal and content team at Lockubator, and I'll be your moderator for today's session. Now, for those who are joining us for the first time, Lockubator is a workplace compliance platform that helps organizations build safe and compliant workplaces. At the heart of our platform is a secure complaint redressal system that allows organizations to handle sensitive issues like sexual harassment with confidentiality and transparency. We also offer a wide range of e-learning courses on topics like PoSH, workplace ethics and conduct, intellectual property awareness, DEI, and more. Now, coming back to today's topic, which is false complaints under PoSH, rare cases or rising concern. We are very fortunate to be joined today by three inspiring women who have been at the forefront of driving safer and more inclusive workplaces. Let me introduce them. We have with us Priya Bhatnagar. Priya is a PoSH practice head at Sthirjeevi Solutions and possesses a deep understanding of workplace dynamics and the critical elements required to foster a positive, safe, and inclusive workplace for all. She specializes in designing comprehensive PoSH training programs, conducting awareness workshops, and implementing robust reporting and redressal mechanisms. Great to have you back, Priya. Thanks again for joining us.
Thank you so much, Srimoy, for having me today. And it's such an important topic, as I already shared. Thank you.
Our pleasure. We also have with us Rachana MC. Rachana is a senior HR professional with over a decade of experience across startups, logistics, AI, and prop tech sectors. Currently the Associate Director HR at No Brokerhood, she has led critical HR functions spanning talent acquisition, HR business partnering, performance management, and employee engagement. Rachana has also been actively involved in grievance redressal, balancing empathy with organizational integrity. Her cross-industry expertise and commitment to ethical workplaces make her a trusted voice in HR leadership forums. Wonderful to have you with us, Rachana.
Thanks, Srimoy. That was a wonderful intro.
We also have with us Nidhi Sood. Nidhi, who brings a wealth of experience spanning manufacturing, retail, large conglomerates, and a leading startup, Unicorn. She began her career with the Aditya Birla Group, where she spent a decade in diverse HRBP and COE roles. She then moved to the Landmark Group, contributing for 5 years, with her last role as head of corporate HR for lifestyle. Currently, she leads people and culture at Curefit, overseeing the core teams and managing a workforce of over 5,000 employees across the country. She is also the presiding officer of the PoSH Internal Committee at Curefit. Thank you for joining us today, Nidhi.
Thank you so much for Srimoy for the kind words. Look forward to a meaningful conversation.
Absolutely. So let's start with round one. So the first question is for you, Priya. In your experience, what are the most common motivations behind false or malicious complaints? And do you see this as a growing concern today, or does available data suggest otherwise?
Okay, so a very, very valid question. But as every coin has two sides, I would say same holds true for sexual harassment complaints as well. While we do see that majority of complaints are genuine, but we really cannot ignore the reality that there are instances of false or malicious complaints, as we say. It is not that rare, pretty real as well. And the law definitely acknowledges this scenario as well, to say so. So to answer that, of course, it exists at first place. Uh, but of course, as you questioned, that we need to look why these actually, issue comes, or these kind of complaints, how they crop up, or what are the key motives behind that. I would attribute, so we're talking about from a workplace perspective here right now. So we focus on, workplace rivalry and grudges. It's been largely seen that that adds to one of a very, very common trigger, which arises from office politics to jealousy over promotions, or, resentment over key task or high value accounts being assigned to someone, uh, perceptions of favorism due to closer relationship with managers, are some of the key things which, could be seen at a workplace as a workplace rivalry. And people do sometimes push individuals to misuse the framework as means of retaliation to these things, at workplace. Other important part is, which is intent to damage reputation. Okay, so which becomes little more personal, on a personal aspect, personal conflict. uh, Examples for this just be quote, though it could be little less frequent, and largely it is workplace rivalry or grudges, but this also holds a, constitutes a decent amount of, when we talk about false complaints. So these cases comprises of consensual relationships turned sour at one point of time, typically, unresolved conflicts, public humiliations at times, So, in such instances, probably it becomes very, very personal, and the deliberate intent becomes to tarnish somebody's personal or professional reputation. Uh, a third category, which I would not really constitute as a motive, but at times there is misinterpretation of conduct as well, I would say. Sometimes some actions are perceived in a way which might not directly qualify as a sexual harassment, but at the same time, perceived as harassment at one point of time. Uh, but this does not fall under a false case. It is a case of misinterpretation. So yes, you have, various categories, but typically, the two discussed earlier are prime motives when we talk about this. Yeah. And I guess you had another question lined up when you asked about concern or some data around. So I would say that, well, there is no authoritative India-wide data right now on this percentage, but what's seen in courts in few of the cases, it's been called out multiple times in courts as well from the misuse, where they observed a recurring pattern of false allegations. However, I would say still, if we, as an exception, it remains as an exception than a norm. If we still have to put a number to it, roughly we can say under less 2% of what reported cases could be safely to say that, yeah, there are cases which can be attributed. So I hope I answered your question. So while sorry, I'm not able to, sure if a data would have helped you much in that, but for sure, I would rather go for a published data rather than giving a number. So, but still, a good underreported number of 2% could be a number you can go with.
Absolutely. That gives us a rough idea about the percentage that we're talking about. Perfect. Thank you, Priya. So the next question is for you, Rachana. From a culture building perspective, what proactive strategies can HR implement to address the root causes that might lead to false complaints? Like Priya said, workplace conflicts, poor communication, toxic team dynamics, before they escalate to formal complaints.
So, Srimoy, to answer your question, I think I have seen how workplace culture directly shapes how people raises their voices. So, special training is given. For example, somebody becomes first-time manager. A special training is given for these first-time managers, because when your colleagues, there are certain behaviors which are accepted, but when you become a manager, there is a thin line which you have to draw being a manager. So, special training for first time managers are given. And then PoSH awareness and clarity, especially explain what exactly clarifies or qualifies as a harassment. And people always misunderstand whistleblower cases as PoSH. So if there is something wrong happening in the organization, that cannot constitute to PoSH. Clearly saying what are whistleblower cases and what is PoSH, I think that awareness is required. Third, to say trust based culture. If employees trust HR or the leadership, naturally, I think these false complaints can be reduced, and probably you can have a transparent and open communications. And also in our organization, what we do is we have open door practices, and these are very simple and straightforward open door practices we have in our organization. Then coming to some of the other strategies, what we have is we have well-beings and listening mechanisms. As Priya told, a simple frustration, if it is not heard at the right time, I think can become a false allegation. So what we do is we do a closed departmental wise speak up circles. If anybody has any sort of problem or frustration, they can speak up openly in front of the team members. Plus we have pulse surveys, anonymous feedbacks which we take up from the employees. And one point I would like to say, which I have seen majorly, relationship cases. Sometimes breakup spills into PoSH complaints, and people are dating. If you break up, they put a PoSH allegation. In this, we clearly communicate to the employees that breakup is personal and PoSH is professional. Mixing two is never appreciated. This is the common case we see most of the times in PoSH. Then we also reinforce about the gender neutral policies which we have in the organization, and clearly communicate good behaviors are appreciated and the bad ones always needs to be corrected. Probably when conflicts are resolved early with a good clarity and trust is visibly there in the organization, then probably it answers to your question. False complaints rarely find any space.
Wonderful. Thanks for sharing these insights, Rachana. I mean, they are so complementary. I mean, combining this with the actual legal framework of PoSH can be, I think, a very holistic way of looking at false complaints issue. Thanks. Moving on to the next question for you, Nidhi. At Curefit, what practices has the internal committee adopted to address false or malicious complaints while still maintaining a safe space for genuine complaints to be heard?
Sure. So there are two aspects to it. When a complaint comes in, the IC committee looks into from two lenses. First and foremost, IC ensures that the two principles are followed. The first one being that it protects the safety and trust, ensures a trustful environment for the genuine complaints. So the person who is raising the concern feels assured and feel being heard, and their concerns and complaints are looked into objectively. Secondly, also ensures that there is a due fairness and the safeguarding of the complainant is looked into, and there is any aspect of being a false or a malicious complaint, if at all is there, is eliminated, and how that is being part is tackled. So if any complaint comes and that aspect is there, there are further two things which needs to be looked in. One, if there is a malicious intent, or if there is inadequate witness or evidences about it. Certain time, if there is malicious intent, it will come out as we follow through the process. And if there are inadequate supporting witnesses or evidences, that will also come out through the due process as we follow through. And to substantiate it and to bring the process maturity, whether it is done by the IC committee or the functional leaders involved, what we do in Curefit is we conduct awareness and session training programs from time to time. Also, it is ensured that there is a certain process rigor which is maintained, so that it is not dependent on the people who are driving the process, but it is process by itself, which holds the trust of the people in the organization, that nobody has that apprehension about it. And third is the confidentiality, so that people, when the concern is being raised and people involved are aware that when the process is going on, the confidentiality of is maintained. And if they have any information, if they have any query, they have to reach out to IC committee on this matter and nobody else. By doing so, we ensure that the process is duly adhered by, and no false rumor or any false allegations, or only genuine complaints are listened to.
Thanks, Nidhi. Thanks for breaking it down so beautifully. All right, let's move on to the next round where we'll get into a bit of detailed description. So let's start with the legislation, the PoSH Act itself. So Priya, the next question would be, what does the PoSH Act specifically say about false or malicious complaints? And as per your experience, how does one identify a false complaint?
Okay. So the PoSH Act is very precise about this. And, Section 14 in the Act talks about the false and malicious complaints. It says that a complaint can only be called false if it is filed with the intent to deceive or harm. So here, the intent part is important, because it is important to note that not every complaint that can be, can be proven. There could be some which might not be proven, but still they are valid complaints, but there could be, we should not confuse it with unsubstantiated complaints. Okay. So as per the law, it is clear that the intent should be to malign, or, intent to harm. Then in that case, in a lot of cases, obviously, because of evidences or absence of witnesses, there may be, or private nature of the harassment, we are not able to provide the or conclude it with right evidences. Then in that case, still we cannot call it as a false complaint. That's very clear and covered in the law. Now let's look at how one can identify. It is for a complaint to qualify as false, the internal committee must find it misleading at the first place. And how does it find it to be misleading, or what are the markers? Could be clearly that there is inconsistency in the complainant statements. What are their versions of the event? Are they changing without reasonable explanations? It should raise questions if the versions are getting changed again and again. So consistency is an important marker among the witnesses as well and the complainant as well. Something?
I think the video got stuck.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not audible also.
Yeah. Am I audible?
Yeah.
Okay,
you
so
were
we'll,
audible.
okay, so we'll move on to the next question then, and we'll wait for Priya to come back. So the next question is for you, Rachana. From an HR perspective, what are some common fears or perceptions you see among employees or leadership when it comes to false complaints?
Okay. So you're asking employees' fears and leadership fears. So to break down, first I'll talk about employee fears. So employees fear about, what if I'm not believed because others have misused the system. There are cases where people have misused the system, and we have told the case studies, and people might think, what if they think even my complaint is not right? And second thing, they might also think that, what if speaking up labels me as a troublemaker? You raise a voice and you get noted. So people also think that if I raise my voice, I might be labeled as a troublemaker. Then third point, could be like, what if genuine cases gets dismissed as a false complaint? What if they do not think this is the complaint and they think this is the false complaint? I think these are some of the employee fears when it comes to false complaints. And leadership level, definitely it is the damage of reputation. A false complaint could damage the reputation before even the truth comes out. Leaders always think, what if this gets to know to other reportees of mine? My reputation will be damaged. And sometimes manager may also become overcautious. For example, if they are dealing with any female employee, they cannot go over aggressive. They might think that this can lead to a PoSH complaint. So by being overcautious, they are hurting team bonding as well as productivity. So this is one of the fear. And sometimes they also think any decision could be seen as biased. So whenever any decisions they have taken, they might think that this is a biased decision. So these are some of the fears among employees as well as leaders. But to me, false complaint create hesitation. Employees hesitate to speak and leaders hesitate to act. And the real fear isn't complaint itself. It is the loss of trust and where the HR must step in these kind of cases.
Understood. Thanks, Rachana. Hi, Priya. Okay, let's resume, Priya. So you were talking about that there are red flags from the complaint form itself, like the complaint application itself.
True.
Yeah,
So
let's continue.
So at the very first stage, of course, every complaint needs to be considered. So prima facie, you cannot say that, you cannot consider. So when it goes into inquiry, then we need certain things to be seen, right? From there, the inconsistency in the versions of, statements come out. So one important marker comes when we do, inquiry. This part of the inquiry process, because we have to get into an inquiry to establish if a complaint is false or something. Without prima facie on hitch or assuming, we cannot lead to it. So this is important as well, because the law says that to establish if something has malicious or false, you need to corroborate it with right evidences. And in that, it only happens when you are, doing thorough inquiry about it. So, of course, that's important to get into an inquiry and then establish these facts. Inconsistencies, then, of course, evidence reviews, any kind of fabrication, contradictions, or tampered documents, be it email, messages, CCTV logs, etc. These are all strong red flags. So these needs to be checked. Of course, timing matters. So sometimes, I'll give a short example from one of the cases itself. The harassment complaint surfaced typically after a poor appraisal or an action in the appraisal cycle, right? So timings, of course, matter. So we need to check that motive and the context as well, that, and go back and connect the dot at times. But of course, no assumptions and no emotions need to come in play here. It has to be purely basis the evidences and context setting of the motive. Then, of course, the complainant's conduct. Now, there are times when there is non-cooperation or repeated absence also of people from the inquiry, refusal to provide evidences, or attempt to influence witnesses. So all these do signal some malified intent, right? So we need to establish and we need to see it in totality, that how are things falling in place when we do our inquiry. Of course, a witness and document cross-check is something which is given as a fact that needs to be done whenever we are being supported by these witnesses and documents. So that becomes these important markers. So I would say, as per whatever is, once this is established, whatever is stated is part of the service rule and the policy, of course, that needs to come in play. But at the very, very, very first stage, law has rightly set the threshold, to protect the genuine complaints while ensuring fairness to respondents. So when you asked me about what does the Act says, the Act clearly says a malified intent has to be established by a way of inquiry, which an IC can do. And of course, it needs to consider, fairness towards the respondents and the complainants as well. I think
just a follow-up question, Priya. Have you ever seen that the complainant and the witness pre-decide, or maybe the witness actually supports the complainant in some way, just to make the case stronger, like to make it true?
Yes, it happens. It happens. And hence, I mentioned that it's important to cross-check witnesses and see what are their motives, where are they coming from, are they connected, what's the level of their personal relationship as well. You support each other at a certain level, but is that you're also supporting it in a false complaint, then that needs to be checked as well. So that is also a common scenario. We cannot overrule that scenario, what you mentioned.
All right. Thanks, Priya. Moving on to the next question, Nidhi, for you. So, when respondents raise concerns of being falsely accused, how do you handle this step by step during the inquiry process?
First and foremost, it goes, as even Priya mentioned, is that not to have any biases or judgment, acknowledge and record, and also give visibility on the process transparency, as I mentioned earlier also, because it's not even about the people involved. It's on the strength of the process itself, which should be made clear to both complainant as well as to the respondent. The question which you have asked, how do we go about addressing it in Curefit? Acknowledging and recording respondents' claim that they are saying that no, this is false allegation, they have no role to play in it. That is getting registered. Second is re-emphasizing the process transparency and also giving them clarity in terms of what are their rights as a respondent and how the process of the inquiry would proceed and what would be the timelines about it. Because certain times, as the due diligence has to be done, people involved get anxious. So that also needs to help them understand how it will proceed. Also, it needs to take care of the evidences, whether it is in terms of video, WhatsApp, phone calls, and the neutral point of view doing the examination, and where the entire IC is involved and not going by one or two people from the committee. And as the principle of natural justice, giving them opportunity of being heard. The respondent should always be given full chance to present their views, their evidences. And the IC also has provisions of cross-examination, which is moderated by IC, and that we do it through questionnaire as appropriate in the given stages. So that is facilitated. And once the case is reaching the closure stage, the order is presented and shared with both the parties. And time to time, we remind as appropriate to both the parties. The process is designed to protect everyone involved, and it is not sided to anyone prematurely until the inquiry is concluded.
So, Nidhi, what are the common penalties in case of a proven false complaint?
If that is the case, which really comes to it, then the disciplinary procedure as per the service rule kicks in, and appropriate measure is taken as per that.
As per the policy of the company.
Yes.
Understood. Okay. So the next question for you, Rachana, moving on to round 3. What awareness or communication strategies can HR adopt to reduce the fear of misuse, while also encouraging employees to confidently report genuine complaints?
Okay. So in No Broker, what we do is there is a mandatory new joiner training which we have taken from PoSH Secure, and it is mandatory. In 30 days of employee joining, everybody has to go through this training. If they miss out, we don't even release the salaries of the employees until they complete this training. So to that extent, we are pretty strict about it. And yearly ones, we have refresher trainings as well. Matlab, you have joined recently, the training is completed, it's not done and dusted. Every year we will have a refresher trainings which is provided, and certification is mandatory. Again, for the refresher training also, we have like 45 days of deadline. Plus, we do regular sanitization workshops. What is the rights plus responsibilities of the employees, be it could be a male or a female employee, is clearly taught. Then every time we reassure confidentiality. For example, when somebody reports any sort of complaint, we clearly tell them that the identity is protected. So every complaint, first thing what we do is we build trust, and we reinsure confidentiality is maintained throughout the process. Then the third could be storytelling in an anonymized case study. So every quarterly once, or if there is any posh case, we don't even take the real names of the employees. We make it as a storytelling, and we clearly tell it to the employees. This also gives them clear picture. Then two-way channels. Instead of just a policy training, what we do is we create a HR open hours. For example, in a month specifically, 1 hour is dedicated to the employees for this, where employees can directly walk up to HR or to senior management, and they can ask whatever questions they have. Examples like what constitute to the PoSH case, and if they have any question and answers. Sometimes we take up digital Q&As as well. uh, Also, employees can act indirectly, give an example and ask, does this constitute as harassment? So one-on-one session with the HRBPs. And also we have wonderful thing which we do. We have location wise HRBPs, and every HRBP mandatorily should connect with female employees monthly once. So we don't go till we get a complaint. So every month they have to reach out to employees personally. They have to have one-on-one with the employees, especially female employees, and make a report and send for their particular location what it is. So I think when we started this, I could see 30% of the cases got reduced. And also balancing message sometimes we give to the employees, because we also saw at times that a good increment is not given, then it is a posh complaint. So we emphasizes we have gender neutral policies in the organization. The key message what we give to the employees is, when communication emphasizes on protection, accountability and confidentiality, maybe employees feel safe to speak up and less fearful of any sort of misuse, I say.
Wonderful. Thanks for sharing these initiatives that you have taken at No Broker, Rachana. I mean, so many you have shared. I mean, I'm sure all of us can choose one and at least start. Thanks again for sharing this.
Welcome.
All right. Moving on to the next question for you, Priya. Could you share a few judgments or case laws related to false complaints and the key lessons organizations can draw from them?
Sure. So, of course, I would say confidentiality becomes a very important part. So, from the cases which are published or in public key already, probably I can share some examples with you, which are there on the public domain already. And we can surely draw some. I think the important part here would be the lessons which we draw out of these, rather than going back to the what was done. One important judgment is around Anita Suresh versus Union of India. This case was dealt in the Delhi High Court, and this specifically under this, I would give a very very short brief, because 3-4 I have in mind probably, which I can share. The complainant alleged harassment by a colleague, and it went into inquiry, of course, and none of the witness supported the version given by the complainant here. Instead, the witnesses consistently stated that the allegations were fabricated. And why they were fabricated, of course, with due diligence and evidences, it was, and basis the witnesses largely, it was said that because of workplace rivalry, the case had come out because of workplace rivalry. So the court did uphold IC's observation here and the judgment, and to deliberate intent of harassment was kept, and imposed around 50,000 a fine of to the complainant. So that's one of the cases. There is one more case of Shanta Kumar versus CSIR, which is Council of Scientific and Industrial Research. And this is a very interesting case. I'll take a couple of minutes to actually share. In this, the complainant, the women actually employee at CSIR, had filed a complaint against her senior, Mr. Shanta. It's published as well. So the complainant alleged that Mr. Kumar had harassed her during various work interactions, and specifically mentioned one incident which which triggered her to file the cases, that he holded her wrongly and spoke in an appropriate manner. So of course it went into an inquiry, and of course she told that he was holded from hand and walked out of the lab, and it had a background what she shared. So when the IC was investigating it, no corroborative proof or witnesses could testify the allegations, and it was actually found that she was giving some classified information outside, because it was a research institute, and she was being asked to leave and not to come work, and she did came and confronted to leave the laboratory. She still was there and kept working, and there was a heated argument, and hence he had to actually hold hand and take her out and get out of the laboratory and lock the laboratory. This was the exactly case. There were exchange of words which he also admitted. So see, to actually malign and say that she was part of the classified information being passed, it need to be covered, and so the case was filed against him. So this was one of the case, a very sensitive and typical case which I could share. Another case we can talk about Rachika Chabra versus Air France case. Again, employee of Air France. This was filed harassment case against a superior, and during the inquiry, the evidence were clear that it was a professional rivalry. Interpersonal frictions were there, and of course workplace disagreement were there. There were more to it, kind of a posting, etc. And so but a case was filed, and IC could not find sufficient evidences for this. Then the course the complaint went to actually Delhi High Court. It was appealed, and IC's findings were upheld in this as well. And it was considered that hostile work relationship does not amount to sexual harassment. So that was the concluding remark. So court did stress that it is important to differentiate between what we call as workplace conflicts versus ego clash and favoritism or performance disagreement. So we can go on. There are a few more cases, but I think if we go back and see certain cases, some of the key learnings for organizations to pick up is for sure, as this Nidhi and Rachana also spoke about very clearly about sensitization and awareness of type of cases or harassment. It plays a very important part, because you have to distinguish the conflict from harassment. So that's very, very important. And clear awareness needs to be raised again then. And not only awareness, I think a context and intent very crucially need to be set. Another important, if we go back to these cases, is role of IC. It's been very, very critical and strong diligence that is required, because again, we are establishing a case which is for and against the complainant, right? If it is false, then it needs to have the evidences and intent clearly established. So IC's role here is very, very big to establish that if it is a professional grievance and or genuine PoSH violation needs to be done, has been done, sorry. And one important aspect again here in all these cases, if I go back and see, has been very, very evidence based inquiry and strong documentation that is to be supported with this, because it cannot work on just emotions or perceptions. Circumstantial evidences, witnesses, all needs to be seen and they need to be documented very well. So that's one important learning that probably can be picked up from these cases, I would say.
Absolutely. So being an IC member is no joke. It is
absolutely. It's a lot of responsibility, and a right attitude is also very, very important there.
Absolutely. Hats off to what you guys have been doing. All right. So the next question for Nidhi. Could you share some practical challenges you faced when dealing with false complaints, and how did you manage these?
Sure. So the typical issue which comes up is generally it would be very emotionally charged, because respondents sometimes feel that, if this kind of complaint has come, it will tarnish my career, then there is no way out, and there is no remedy. I may not even have a chance to prove or share my stance. So that kind of issue comes up. And how do we go about addressing it? We ensure to give them that visibility on the process transparency, educating them again on their rights as a respondent, and certain time, because again it varies from people to people in their given context. If it's a very extreme case, then counseling support is also extended. Then there are chances where people generally are, they have their own camaraderie. But having said that, there is a sensitivity of the matter and confidentiality has to be maintained. However, they're trying to support, but then there is a thin line. And in support, they share, and then it gets into grapevine, and confidentiality gets compromised. So education here plays a very, very critical role. So apart from regular orientation and education, when the case incident happens, immediate rigor on the process has to be done with both complainant as well as respondent, because then it's on top of their mind. At the same time, when the correspondence which is done by the IC with the complainant or the respondent, it is re-emphasized, which helps to ensure that this workplace gossip or grapevine is eliminated. So process strength is maintained. And there are, rarest of rare, but again, can't negate it, retaliation, fear of retaliation, where complainant is genuine, but the respondent accuses them, because people get into defensive mode. No, this didn't happen. And how do we navigate? So as an IC, carefully review of evidences and documents are done. And as I mentioned earlier, we do it collectively and by everybody involved in the IC, and not by one or two people, so that if any biases or any other aspects are comprehensively reviewed. And the idea is to look at the intent, because intent and context matters, and then the holistic aspect of the case reported is reviewed. And the toughest part is that balancing the speed and the fairness in the whole process, because everybody, business involved, would be wanting the result quickly, parties involved would be anxious. So giving them that sense of comfort, due diligence is being done. You have any query, please reach out to IC. But this is how it is going to go about it. So that's how it happens.
Thanks for summarizing it so beautifully, Nidhi. Now, let's have one final closing question for all panelists, even though we have covered it in bits and parts, but one question to all. We'll start with Rachana. If you had to suggest one best practice for handling false complaints without discouraging genuine ones, what would it be?
On top of my mind, if you ask me to pick one best practice, there is no one best practice. truly. But if you tell me to say what is the practice we follow in No Broker, what we follow is intent based resolution. So instead of treating all false complaints same, we understand what's the intent. HR should differentiate. Was it just a case of misunderstanding or lack of awareness? I mean, probably in this first two cases, coaching and awareness would work. But if it is a deliberate misuse, I think some sort of disciplinary action should be taken in a respectful manner. Probably this approach has helped us. And at the same time, we have to create a culture where people know each other and heard with respect. Whether their complaint is validated or not, there should be a respectful closure. So, in simple terms, if I have to say, it should be an intent based resolution plus respectful closures is equal to, I can say, there is a fairness for all and there is a trust in the system.
Perfect. Priya?
So I would just back what Rachana also said. One, so I would not focus one repeatedly again going back to the culture. I think why false complaints are coming, probably it has some, and if the percentages are high, XYZ, so we need to go back and set the context and the culture first and see on the sensitization part, right? Because the real risk, is when if too much of emphasis on false complaint is there and overemphasis, there is unintentionally somewhere we are creating an environment where real victims do hesitate to come out, right? So one, we need to see why such complaints are coming and what has been probably a repeated intent if they are being repeated at some point of time. So we need to go back and check on that. Second, I think I have spoken in my last section as well, but a very important part is well-equipped IC. Why the complaints are coming, false complaints are coming, is something which we can go back and check once we have the inquiry and things in place, right? And then we can go and set the context right. But to assess that, I think the most important part is having a well-equipped IC with right knowledge. Important is attitude and sensitivity to conduct it with a lot of empathy and neutrality, and following a due process. Because we need to balance two aspects here. One is non-negotiable support for complaints, and at the same time accountability for deliberate misuse, right? So having a right construct of IC, having the right capability building within them does take care of this, because you're penalizing someone, you're not unnecessarily penalizing someone for raising a concern, and also sending a strong message within the organization if the IC address it seriously and rightly. So a balanced approach there is very important, I think. So for me, one of the most important aspect is having a right capability building within the organization for IC as well.
Perfect. Right. Thanks, Priya. Nidhi?
Two aspects. First and foremost, from culture, we should work towards having a respectful and open culture so that everybody involved is comfortable and open up and speak up if there is some discomfort, if something not aligned with the ways of working of the organization is noticed. Second is, I've been telling through my conversation so far, anchor everything in the process. What does it mean? Like that the process should be transparent, it should be well communicated, consistently applied, irrespective of who the complainant is, who the respondent is. Both the parties should feel safe when the matter is under the inquiry process, so that they are not fearful, they are not apprehensive, and as an org, one should believe in the process. And it also discourages misuse while assuming genuine victims that their voices will be heard without any prejudices or any biases. And as a best practices, my idea would be make the process as a hero. The fairness must be seen, felt, and consistently applied, regardless, again, whosoever it may be. Maybe it would be the junior person most or the highest person involved. It should be consistent and experienced consistently across the organization. That's the key way.
Thank you. Thank you, all the speakers, for beautifully summing up the best practices. Now, before we move to the audience questions, we'd also like everyone to join our Global Compliance Leaders Network. We call it as GCLN on WhatsApp. It's a WhatsApp group where we regularly share resources, case laws, and best practices on workplace compliance, including PoSH. It's a great way to stay connected and continue these conversations beyond today's sessions. So I'll just post the link in the chat. If it resonates with you, any of you, we'll be very honored to have you. Now we will open the floor for audience questions. If you have any questions for our panelists, please drop them in the chat and we'll start looking at it one by one. Okay, in the meantime, let me just mention that if any of you would like to take this conversation further with your internal teams, we have several e-learning courses on PoSH available in regional languages. These are practical, scenario-based, story-based, animated episodes designed to be relevant for employees across all levels of the workforce, be it desk-based or on-ground. So please feel free to reach out to us after the session if you'd like access. I don't think we have any questions. So
it seems like we have explained so well, or people might have not understood anything.
Make process is hero. Nidhi has amazingly summed up the discussion. Thanks. Mohit, yes, we will share the recording of the session soon. But really, thank you, speakers, so much for sharing such concrete, real-world strategies. These are the kinds of insights, that can help organizations strengthen their own processes right away. From the all the insights that you shared, Rachana, at No Broker, what's happening at Curefit, and all the experience you have had, Priya, these things will truly help all of us maybe improve our processes slightly today. So thanks again. And thank you, audience, for joining us today. Let's keep the conversation going and let's together build workplaces that aren't just compliant, but truly safe, inclusive, and respectful.
I would thank you so much, Shrimoy.
Yes,
just as a closing thought, since we might have so many HR and practitioners who are here, I think in my mind, PoSH is one of the most progressive workplace legislations that we have around. And the power definitely lies in how we implement it. If we implement it in the spirit and not just as part of a checklist, I think that makes a whole lot of difference. And the conversations that we are trying to drive and, bring to surface, I think highlights that's how we implement is what it matters, and the power lies there. So let's take from a rarity to a real implementation. All I can say is that.
You rightly said, Priya. I could not have said it better, because so much happens, and this is where it's like, the way it says, like, rubber hits the road. So whatever we may say, these are those critical moments when actually employee or the colleagues around them gets the sense check what actually gets practiced.
True. And I think we do talk about false cases. Rather, I think I would like to actually stress upon the real pressing issue of being underreporting of these cases.
Yeah.
I think the very first thing that needs to be checked or seen is that with a strong system is that it doesn't go underreported or not reported. Of course, these cases might be, as we have to take it with a pinch of salt, and maybe there, but a strong system can take care of it, I would say.
I think that would be our next topic, Priya, underreporting of false complaints, underreporting of PoSH complaints in general. Thanks.
Sure. Thank you so much. It's been a lovely conversation on.
Likewise, it's been so seamless. Thank you, all the speakers. It's been lovely.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.